Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Venktesh Shukla. Welcome to today's show.
Thank you for having me here.
So, Vink, in the VC world, you've been able to do quite a bit in terms of being able to successfully launch company and take it to the IPO. But for the listeners, can you share your background, and let's maybe start with where you were educated and how you came over to the United States.
So, born and brought up in India, I did bachelor's in electrical engineering. My sister was in US, and she thought that every self-respecting electrical engineer should be in Silicon Valley. So I should come here. I had no desire to come here. So instead, I joined the civil service in India, which was for an ambitious young person in those days, in the days of those days of socialism. Civil service, government services, was something that was far more, or at least to me, it was desirable because all my family was in bureaucracy. So I became a bureaucrat, and I was fat, dumb, and happy there until I got married. And my wife had done her undergraduate in engineering from Berkeley here. And the understanding was that she would come to, after the marriage, she would come to India. Then I discovered that she had zero intention of doing that. So we lived apart for 2 years. Occasionally she would visit and I would visit. And I thought that that was it's not a sustainable future. So, so I made a decision, which in hindsight turned out to be a slippery slope kind of a decision. I always wanted to do my MBA in this country. So I went to Sloan School at MIT to do my MBA, and I didn't have enough money to pay for the tuition. So neither did my wife. She was working as an engineer, but even that was not enough to pay for tuition at MIT. So I had to borrow money to complete my MBA. And then the realization dawned on me that if I went back with my meager salary as a bureaucrat in India, I would never be able to pay back that loan. So I said, okay, let me work here for 2 years, pay off the loan, and then go back to my job in India. After 2 years, you'd say, okay, maybe I'll go back when I become director, when I become a VP, when I become a CEO. And the bottom line is, she won, and I'm here.
Starting out, of course, it was quite a move coming out from another country, getting the MBA here, and then establishing roots because you're civil servant over there in India, pretty much. Uh, what point of time did you decide, I'm going to launch my own company?
That didn't come easy. See, I was part of some big companies like Teradyne and Cadence. Uh, but in Cadence, in the last job, uh, I was, one day I looked at where I was spending my time. And that was a revelation to me. I actually looked at my calendar, went back and analyzed that. And I discovered that I was spending about 60% of my time in meetings, another 20% of my time, uh, preparing for meeting or following up from the meeting, or about 25% of the time. Uh, and another 10% of the time on HR related issues with employees and stuff. So the thing that I really enjoyed the most was spending time on product issues and with the customers was only about 5%. So I said, this is, I don't like this thing. And then the startup happened. I got pulled into a startup, and that was a huge success. So I got a taste of it. Plus, I think the real exciting thing was that there was a direct correlation between every decision that I made, and you could see the impact immediately. In a big company, you don't see that impact immediately. You are going to meeting, you are influencing some policy, some decision, then it just gets communicated, then they have to be trained, and then they have to be roll it out. It's a long, drawn out kind of a process. In a startup, you make a decision and you see the impact right away. That by itself was very, very intoxicating. So from that point onwards, I've always been in a small companies and startups.
I'm visiting here today with Venktesh Shukla. He is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur and now practicing venture capital. And Vink, I need to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about what your projects that you're currently working on. Sure. We'll be right back after these messages.
Grandpa, can we do chemistry? Papa, Daddy. Grandpa, let's do something fun.
We'll help you stay organized so you can focus on what really matters in life. Give us a call today and see how we can help you start saving taxes. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Vink Shukla. And Vink, in the first segment, we talked about the transition of having graduated over in India and taking a job as a civil servant and getting an MBA at MIT and eventually working into one of the passions you realize you have. It's that of startup companies. So bring us up to date. What are you currently working on now?
So, I started a seed stage venture capital fund about 5 years ago. And that has just been a phenomenal experience. I'd been associated with, before I started the fund, I'd been associated with 30 startups, either as a, as a founder or CEO, or as executive, or as an investor, advisor, board member. And that was fascinating. So I started a small fund, seed stage fund, where would typically be the first institutional investment in a startup, and that has been pretty fascinating. Actually, we have had some. What I find is that a lot of investors really don't add much value to the company. I felt as an entrepreneur that my VCs, I expected my VCs to either challenge me in my thinking, a strategy and stuff, or help me with customer introductions, or help me see with potential acquirers or channel partners and stuff. And I rarely got that. So when I became a VC, I was determined that having had this empathy for the entrepreneur, having come from that side, that every interaction with that entrepreneur, I would strive to add some value, and I think this is I don't know if it has actually, if every entrepreneur has benefited or not, but enough have that they started sending their friends and everybody else they see to the fund. So it's been a fascinating journey. What happens is that most of the other investors, have been either with funds for a long time, or they never done a startup on their own. So to really don't have that empathy for what the entrepreneur is going through when he is making those first, 50 to 100 decisions, and it's those first 50 to 100 decisions that really sets the foundation of the company, not just the foundation but the guardrails. So the culture is set. Culture is set not just by the founders, but the first 4 or 5 employees that you hire. And I give this advice to entrepreneurs that don't hire someone who can do the job that you have in mind well. I mean, make an extra effort to hire someone who can not only do the job you have at hand well, but has demonstrated in his past work experience the capacity to learn new skills and grow on the job. Because obviously you're doing this startup because you hope to grow. And you grow, there will be need, you see, for people who can grow with the company. So make that an explicit criteria when you're interviewing and hiring people.
I'm visiting here today with Vink Shukla. And Vink, we're coming up against the break. And when we come back, I want to talk about some of the future trends companies and emerging technologies that are coming out today and putting our landscape for the future. We'll be right back after these messages.
Grandpa, we found a golden stone.
We have to watch out for the treasure guardian.
Oh no, the treasure guardians!
Since you can't take your wealth with you, spend time with your family. Groco, servicing family office needs
Okay, here we go. Now watch this.
since 1964.
Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Venk Shukla. Venk is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, venture capital, working primarily now with seed stage companies. And Venk, what are some of the current trends that you see happening in these startup companies today?
One of the biggest change that you see happening is that every company in the world, every organization in the world is getting digitized. There's no escape from that, which means that the problems that only big companies that adopted technology, early stages, they're not the only ones facing all these challenges of cybersecurity, for instance. The other good thing that's happening is that industries that were traditionally, you didn't think of them as a technology companies, are becoming technology companies. But think about, for instance, mining. Now, mining is as removed from technology as you could get. And you just send the mining vehicles, the most sophisticated mining vehicles, to extract the thing out and get it going. Well, it turns out that there's a huge economic compulsion to make those mining vehicles autonomous. And this is the cutting edge. Autonomous driving is the cutting edge application of artificial intelligence, machine vision, and all the sensors, all IoT, and everything that you can think of. It brings it all together. So the biggest trend that I see is that traditional industries now are getting digitized, and it's opening up the consumption of technology massively all over the world.
Do you see in the trend as the machine learning opens up, it enhancing the value of human interaction or lessening, the value? And I'll give the example that recently they did a survey in China of diagnosis, and they put 60 doctors against I don't know if it's 60, but a number of doctors against artificial intelligence. And they found that the AI was able to get the right answers some 90% of the time, the doctor 60% of the time. What's your opinion here on the proper use for machine learning or AI as we look into the future? Are we going to need people surrounding us to help with it, or eventually, where do you see the most practical, pragmatic applications will be?
So, I think this is very tightly related to the larger question, that is AI, machine learning, going to eliminate jobs, and will that create a crisis? I think there are two answers to that. When it comes to the example that you took, I think what will happen is that application of technologies like AI would change the role that a doctor plays. So you're absolutely right. When it comes to diagnosis, people will rely more and more on these automated techniques. But those doctors would be able to spend more time on other things related to treatment part of it, or to figure out to see how unique this person's problem is and what kind of a treatment fits this unique individual. So the things that get short shrift today, doctors will get to spend more and more time on that. So the nature of work is going to change. The work itself is not going to be eliminated. So this is for the white collar kind of workers. On a blue collar stuff, I think any work that is repetitive, Any work that is monotonous and hazardous, chances of that getting automated are very, very high. And that's not all bad. And I think there's a lot of debate going on in in across the technology and the policy circles that cumulatively, is this all going to be for good or for bad? I don't know the answer, but I think that we are a long ways off from that.
So, why do some companies succeed and others fail?
I tell you from a startup standpoint, right? I mean, the failure rate in Silicon Valley, they say, is about 50% of the companies fail. I mean, they don't return a penny to the investors, and there's a good reason for it. And the reason is that Silicon Valley is full of very, very smart technology people, and they have solved some tough technology problem. Then they start a company, then they look for a business problem to solve. And sometimes they are able to find the business problem and successfully transition to solving that problem. And sometimes they're not before the money runs out. So the kind of thing that I like to invest in is not the first, is typically the first kind, which is where before starting them, at least one person in the founding team has a deep, deep domain expertise in one area, and his partners are technology people. So they have figured out that what the problem in that industry is, and they have figured out how technology can be used to solve that problem. That's my ideal combination of a team. So I'll give you an example. I just funded a company that does that is automating a work that has not changed in last 200 years. Whenever a container comes from outside into US or any port in the world, someone, a lowly paid individual, custom clearance broker, goes through 1,000 pages of a tariff sheet to figure out what tariff to apply. If a wood going into a table is one tariff, wood going into a closet is another tariff, wood going into a chair is another tariff. So looks through that, takes 3-4 hours, takes it to US Customs, and they go back and forth. Very inefficient process. So a company started by a person who was in DHL for 23 years and lived this pain every single day of his working life. Got together with some of his friends, Silicon Valley friends, and started a company to digitize and automate this process. That's the kind of thing that I look for, which is deep, deep domain expertise combined with technology insight.
Think I'm running up against the break, but I want to hold you on for the last segment. I'm visiting here today Vink Shukla. He's Silicon Valley entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. I'm visiting here with Vink Shukla. And Vink, we talked about the span of your life coming over to the country and getting your degree at MIT after remarkable education over in India. It was IIT?
It was NIT.
NIT. Okay. And also a little trivia. I know you don't tell many people about this, but they take a national exam in India, don't they?
Huh?
They take it at the end of school.
Oh, yeah.
What did you score?
It's pretty high.
Pretty high. I think
Yeah.
you're in. It was the top 2 or something like that.
Pretty close.
Yeah. So,
Pretty close.
anyways, when we're looking at the span of life and you're giving advice, having walked this path that you walked, what advice would you give for the aspiring entrepreneur today?
That's a very good question. And I have this conversation with entrepreneurs all the time. Anyone who starts a company is going to spend 4 to 5 years of his or her life on chasing this dream. So one of the first things they owe it to themselves and to their family is to go out and talk to 30 of the potential customers, at least 30. And it's not easy to do that. So if you're trying to solve, you see a problem, you see some hospital has in terms of security or some mining company has. Go talk to at least 30 potential customers. Tell them what you plan to do. Ask them if they have that problem. And if they have that problem, are they spending money on it? And if they're spending money on it, are they happy with what they are getting? How would they like to see it improved? And then ask them, if I can do XYZ, would you pay for it? And if you pay for, how much would you pay for it? And have this conversation with 30 people. Nothing will bring you to reality.
It's an interesting area. The startups. So often they're so happy to get the first customer, but pricing is a big issue.
Yes, 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 exactly.
And people don't always get that right, and sometimes they undersell all the research and development recapture that went into developing. So
I mean, this is such an important thing. And, despite all the wisdom, all the travel knowledge available in Silicon Valley, I'm still surprised that a lot of entrepreneurs haven't done this fundamental work before jumping into it.
now, Vink, a person to our listeners, they say, "Hey, I want to reach out to Vink, and he's in Steve's stage, and maybe talk about mentoring." Is there a way to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. I love doing that thing. I'm always willing to talk to entrepreneurs, even if they are not ready, even if we are not ready. But I always enjoy talking to entrepreneurs.
And how would they go ahead and do that?
So on my website, it's called Monta Vista Capital. They can go to the website and there's a form. They can just fill their information and send it to me. I'll respond.
Last question. At the end of life, what do you want to be known for?
Frankly speaking, I don't care. I really don't care. While I'm living my life, I want to be able to add value to my family, uh, to my community, and help people like entrepreneurs. That's what I really care about. I really don't care about what people think about me after I'll go.
Lifting and building those around us. It's very good. Very good. Well, Vink, I appreciate you being here on today's show. And for the listeners, appreciate you joining us here on American Dreams. It's great to have you with us today. And we're at the end of our program here. So join us again right here on this station. Have a great week.